Good morning.
Good morning.
So 2 weeks ago in Tayshow, after the Tayshow was over, I settled on a title, and it was The Habit of Awareness. And really what that was concerned with, most of what I was talking about, is just getting a handle on the power of habits, many of which we don't really even know we have, or we're just sort of faintly aware of them. And there is a great deal of value in sort of taking inventory, noticing how we do, why we do what we do, to the extent that we can ever know that. And I had a lot of material, as I said at the end, and so here we go for round two. I'm going to talk more about, focus more on attitude. Attitude we bring to practice, and even more broadly, the attitude we bring to our lives, to our ideas about ourselves. And I'm going to start off by revisiting one of the psychologists that I quoted from, read a little bit of 2 weeks ago, whose name is Carol Dweck, D-W-E-C-K. She's a psychologist at Stanford, and she wrote a book called Mindset. I looked up a little more about her. She was born 4 days before I was, in 1946, so she is ancient. And I just want to read that quote from the Buddha. I tried it out last time. As irrigators lead water where they want, as archers make their arrows straight, as carpenters carve wood, the wise shape their minds. This is such a promising thought, that how we use our mind determines how our mind works. It's the reason we're so messed up now, is all the things we've bought into and done and developed, and we're dragging them around with us. Somebody or other, William James, said if the young only knew how soon they'd be, I'm paraphrasing him here, a bundle of habits, they'd pay better attention. But all of us, young, old, sharp, dull, every variety, naturally kind, naturally aggressive, we're all at the mercy of our habits. And we can't just go in there and fix it. You know, this isn't a project that lends itself to a technical solution. There are certainly a lot of those out there in the culture. You can make a lot of money offering people, 5 cool ways to get your mojo back or whatever. Could there be 5? I don't know. But the promise of what the Buddha said is basically that all of us can walk this path. All of us can change the way we approach our lives. Simple things like becoming kinder. I always had, probably an unfair antipathy towards modern day Christianity, because there's so much about, being kind and being gentle, And to my ears, I didn't hear any way to be that way other than modeling that behavior, sort of imitation of Christ. And I think pretending to be a certain way, that does have an effect, and maybe some of it begins to change the way you operate. But there's something deeper. And in genuine Christianity, I'm sure it's there too. Don't want to badmouth our brothers, but it's not enough just to say I should be a different way. In the early Buddhist canon, the early Buddhist literature, there are a lot of stories about really dim-witted people, people who can't remember, they're told one half of an aphorism and they can't remember the other half. But of course, in those stories, all of them eventually come to awakening. The message being that that's not what determines your relationship to your life. That's isn't what determines where your mind goes, how full of yourself you are, or how empty. Anyone can do this work. There's also stories, I think I see it in Milarepa and other famous Buddhist practitioners, where extremely violent people, murderers, are able to come to the Dharma and actually become remarkable people. Nobody is ever out of the game, and that includes each one of us. None of us are barred. As Roshi would always say in workshops, everyone, without exception, has what we call Buddha nature. That is, we all have this same mind. It's mind that transcends people, nations, sexes. Without exception. So you could sum that out by saying, there are no bad dogs. There's a website, I can't remember where it is, or I'd tell you, where it's rate your dog. Every single dog, from 1 to 10, rate your dog. And they all get 11 or 12 or 13. I say this partly because we have a dog now, a new dog, and he's a good dog. Anyway, back to Carol Dweck. She wrote this book called Mindset, and basically she talks about two different mindsets. This is a nice way to divide it. One is a fixed mindset, we touched on this last time, and the other is a growth mindset. And just to make it clear, you don't just have one or the other. Everybody is a mixture of the two, as she points out. But for some of us, one really sort of dominates, especially in certain situations, like say you're in school, you're learning math, or maybe you're skiing and you're learning how to ski, or learning how to ice skate, or learning how to dance. Everybody tends to go to the idea of, okay, well, I'm just no good at that, or I'm really good at that. And that has consequences, of course. About the fixed mindset, she said, I've seen so many people with this one consuming goal of proving themselves in the classroom, in their careers, and in their relationships. Every situation calls for a confirmation of their intelligence, personality, or character. Every situation is evaluated. Will I succeed or fail? Will I look smart or dumb? Will I be accepted or rejected? Will I feel like a winner or a loser? We have a president right now who talks a lot about losers. But I'm not going to talk about him. I'm not even going to say that. Let's contrast it before we go on with the other mindset, what she calls a growth mindset. And she says, in this mindset, the hand you're dealt is just the starting point for development. This growth mindset is based on the belief that your basic qualities are things you can cultivate through your efforts. Although people may differ in every which way in their initial talents and aptitudes, interests, or temperaments, there's just so much variation, everyone can change and grow through application and experience. We could say, of course, in Zen, through practice, through Zazen, Zazen on the mat, and Zazen throughout the entirety of the rest of our lives. Kaplo Roshi told me once, John, you can do Zazen standing on your head. You can. There is no place where you can't settle the mind, where you can't look into the mind, where you can't let go of thoughts. Going on, she says, as you begin to understand the fixed and growth mindsets, you will see exactly how one thing leads to another, how a belief that your qualities are carved in stone leads to a host of thoughts and actions, and how a belief that your qualities can be cultivated leads to a host of different thoughts and actions, taking you down an entirely different road. And that's one of the things about true spiritual practice, whatever flavor. We set off down a road, a brand new road, really, once the penny drops and we realize, okay, yes, this is what I'm going to do. This is what I need to do for my sake, for the sake of others. Start heading down an entirely different road, and things have a different meaning. Talk more about that as we go on. She talks some about her early experience, how she began. She says, I wanted people to know they had a choice. We're all a mixture of both, of course, both mindsets, believing we can grow and improve, but also worrying that maybe it's fixed and we don't have enough. And she says, early in her life, my 6th grade teacher seated us around the room in IQ order. And that's just astounding. I felt like she was sealing everyone's fate. Although I fared well in terms of my seating, it really pounded a fixed mindset into my head. So even though I had always loved learning and always loved taking on new things, all of a sudden all I wanted to do was to be smart and look smart and not take risks. And ultimately, this became a focus of my research. The whole goal of my career has been to help people fulfill their potential. I wanted them to know they had a choice. They could unlock that potential, or they could worry about it and protect it. Either one. And I wanted them to go for it. It's really kind of wonderful motivation for what she does, for this kind of investigative psychology. I think she's probably helped a lot of people. They've done studies where they've given children problems, often math problems, and they start out with really easy ones, so the kids get them right. And they have 2 different messages for Group A and Group B. Group A is told, wow, very good, you're very smart. And Group B is told, wow, you worked really hard on that. Very good. We can imagine immediately what happens. The kids, because the next thing they do in this experiment is they give them a much harder problem. And the ones who've been praised on being smart give up quickly, or tend to lie about the results or misrepresent them to others. They just have no more zeal for the job because it's hard. And the ones who've been praised for their efforts seem to enjoy it much more and do better and are more honest. It's not surprising, but it's interesting to see it sort of laid out so clearly. So here we are, moving from one mindset to the other as we go through our life, go through our day. What can we do? How do we move to a more open posture? How do we become more willing to suck it up when things are hard? You know, if you keep going with Zen, you're going to eventually have to suck it up. Like the first time you sit on the mat, for instance. So the first obvious thing to do is just to notice. Notice the messages you're giving yourself. Notice your reaction when things don't go well. It's interesting. Take an interest in how you operate. This right there, just doing that, is a growth mindset. It requires willingness to see how we are, to see what we do. You know, it's very easy to go into some sort of death spiral. You notice yourself feeling like you're worthless, feeling like this is something I can't do, and then that makes you feel even more worthless, and I can't even turn that around. You know, it's just you end up confirming your original ridiculous judgment. Of all the people on the earth, I'm the only one who can't do this. Being willing to see it is such a huge first step. You know, there was some point in my practice where I couldn't figure out how on earth I could possibly get through my koan. I told myself, well, maybe I won't. I don't control that, but I'm going to keep working. And in fact, that focus on I have to have this experience is quite misplaced. There are so many people who have some insight, have had some insight experience, let's put it that way, but it's not part of their life. Often the message that they get is kind of like when the kids are told, wow, you're so smart. You know, here you are. You've done this thing that others maybe can't do, maybe won't do. Aren't you special? That's why you hear the phrase, nothing special, all the time, but no matter how many times that phrase is trotted out, we're all going around trying to be special to one degree or another. I'll come back to this a little bit. I want to touch on a few of the other things before I really talk about growth mindset and a fixed mindset as it applies to Zen practice. So some other things that are helpful is to notice when you have some sort of a setback that it's actually good information. Now you know something that doesn't work. You know, Thomas Edison famously said, I haven't failed, I've just found 1,000 ways that don't work. Really, I mean, his if you read about his struggle to create the first electric light bulb, he tried so many different things as a material for the filament of the bulb. And he never gave up. He knew he could do it. So to be able to be resilient, just to notice when we're deflated, and don't buy into it. You don't have to buy into it. You know, all these attitudes and all these thoughts, attitudes are just a whole host of thoughts. In fact, the attitude that I am a person and I have a self is just a thought. It's just a cloud of thoughts, self-referential. There's actually nothing there. We can discover. It helps to focus on effort rather than continually coming back to the question of, am I good at this? Am I doing it right? What does the teacher think of me? When you focus on effort, you stop worrying about how you look. You know, reluctance to go to Doksan, which I'm quite familiar with, by the way, is part of that fixed mindset. You just I don't feel up to it. I don't want to have my mind state reflected back to me by that guy on the mat. I've got to be different before I can do that. I'll make an effort, but I have to work myself up to it. I had a friend, I've mentioned her before, who said, I could do my taxes if I had the right drug. Something would just come in and change me, I'd be glad to do it. You learn so much by when you're in a situation where you're bailing, you know, you're not going to do it, you're not going to sit an extra round, or you're not going to go to Doksan, or you're not going to work as hard at any task. Doesn't have to be a specific Zen task. You can learn so much when you do it anyway. You don't die. You're actually just fine. Usually, when people do that, they actually kind of get exhilarated. You know, you have something you really don't want to do, maybe cleaning your house, and then you just knuckle down and you do it. It's liberating. It's a hard message to keep in mind, though, the next time you don't want to do whatever is in front of you. Another thing that can really help with moving from fixed to growth is drawing inspiration from the success of others. Seeing it's you know, I sort of encountered this with Esther Gokhale, who is a sort of posture guru, actually was once here at the center in training. She's now based in California, I think around Stanford, somewhere in Silicon Valley. And she has a whole program to help people sort of discover their natural posture, their natural center, finding a way to do it without trying to wrench yourself into a particular shape, which is not terribly productive. One of the things that she suggests that people do when they're working with her method is to observe people who do have good posture. It's kind of buoying to see somebody who naturally stands up straight. I remember being in vacation in Grenada and seeing some kids by the beach playing cricket with some sticks, and their posture was just unbelievably beautiful and unself-conscious, of course. And our brain has what are called mirror neurons. We basically reflect what we see in others. So when we notice what other people are doing that's inspiring, it has an effect. And it also sort of touches on one of the immeasurables. I think it's the 4 immeasurables. I can't remember 4 or 5. Buddhism is full of numbers of things. And that's in Sanskrit called mudita, which is translated as sympathetic joy. When you're in the competitive mind state of trying to see if you measure up or not, it's painful to see other people succeed. It hurts. I remember that from my early practice. One of my students reminded me that we'd been at the center together in the early days, and I had remarked that I wasn't impressed with the character of these people who had been passed on their koan. I immediately went to what was wrong with them. I think he kind of enjoyed my saying that. Zen is a really hard task. We're really swimming upstream. It's so counter to the culture. It's so counter to the way we've been taught. It's pointing at a truth that's completely hidden from us by our belief in a separate self, by our sense of opposition. Me and you, me and them. And it's very hard because it's not something we can do. You know, you can talk about the advantages of a growth mind state if you're trying to learn math or learn how to ski or any difficult task. This task, the Zen task, isn't something that you can do. Of course, it's true to some extent with some of these other tasks too. You can't just do skiing. It has to get into your body. And that's true, so true of Zen. It has to get into your body. It has to become second nature. And it does when you keep at it. So if you have the belief of this is something I can get better at, not this is something where I can reach a certain benchmark and shine over all others, or at least not have all others shine all over me. Don't shine all over yourself. It's so helpful to realize we're just on a path, and it's an endless path. There's a book by a guy named John Blofeld, talks about being in China, and he was quite enamored of Zen and quite dismissive of Pure Land Buddhism, which in Zen we rely on ourselves. This is really a simplification. In Pure Land we rely on the Buddha Amitabha, Amida, as he's pronounced in Japanese. And John Blofeld thought that, self-power is a lot more realistic and courageous and effective than just turning it over to some mythical being that's somehow going to help us. Of course, the reality is that people who are in the Pure Land school, or people who give themselves to Christ, or any other spiritual path, change dramatically, and sometimes more easily than people who are relying on self-power, because there is no self. So he trotted out his prejudice to some of his Chinese friends, and they told them, okay, you understand that this relies on your efforts, and so maybe you're a step ahead of these Pure Land people, and you're all on a journey of 10,000 miles. How much difference does that one step really make? And that's the long view that's so helpful with practice. We're not here to do what Roshi Kapleau rightly accused me of, which is, John, you just want to get Kensho and run. We come from a lineage where initial awakening, is really, really emphasized. That's changed to some extent at the center over time. It's certainly not been thrown out with the bathwater. We still want to see people come to insight, but it can be a problem if you make it your be-all and your end-all. Because now you're setting yourself up to feel like a failure. You're setting yourself up to trip back over into that fixed mindset. That's something I can't do. I'm a failure, so what's the point? The point is not having an experience. It's certainly something that can easily happen when you're working really, really thoroughly and hard and you've really, really devoted yourself. But let's get there first. Let's not worry about what experience we're going to have or not have. There was a time at the center when Roxus, this bib that people wear, were given only to people who Roshi Kapleau had passed on their koan. I found this extremely annoying, and I made a great vow that should I ever somehow improbably get through my koan, I would not take a Roxu. Good for me. So yeah, somehow or other, I worked hard enough and tipped over a little bit. Nothing really terribly remarkable, I don't think. But I stayed true to my promise, and I avoided the Roxu. And then at some point, Roshi asked me to be head of Zendo, and Sante Roshi at the time, just Sante, Swede from Sweden, took me aside and said, "John, you're head of Zendo now. Get a Roxu." So I did, begrudgingly. Actually, the Roxu is really nice, and what we do now, of course, and what I could have done, at any point, is anybody who's taken the precepts, been practicing for a year, who would like to have this sort of symbol of their commitment, is encouraged to sew a Roxu. In fact, you could even have someone sew it for you if you're really all thumbs. And a number of people have done that, and with the people where I've done the ceremony, gotten a lot of really good feedback about how good it feels to have basically, made it formal, this path that we're on. You also have to be a formal student of a teacher, whatever teacher gives you the Roxu. So it's kind of a nice thing when it's separated from this badge of achievement, from the message of, oh, you're really smart, you're really good at this. No, you're not. You're an ass, I'm an ass. The whole thing with the Roxu, of course, comes from Japan. And they had this isn't about the Roxu here, but if you read the Three Pillars, you may notice at some point Roshi Kapleau talks about a sesshin he's at, where after the sesshin is over, the, quote, winners, unquote, are marched through the Zendo. So they would have sesshins, and whoever Harada Roshi or Yasutani Roshi, whichever one it was, had passed, would then sort of participate in a ceremony at the end of the sesshin. Maybe that's good in Japan. I don't think, in my opinion, I don't think it's ever been carried over to this country and anybody has done it. If so, I haven't heard about it. But it just points out the difficulty of making achievement be the measuring stick. You have to get this blessing, or what's the point? No, you have to be more open. You have to be more present. Not perfectly open or perfectly present, just more. Keep growing, keep going. It doesn't matter where you start. It doesn't matter what hand you were dealt or you think you were dealt. So worthwhile. So much pain goes away when we're willing to suffer pain, when we're willing to do the hard work. when we're willing to see how things are, see our weak points, see our self-centeredness, see the way we rush into the dining room to make sure we get enough food. See the way we lose our focus in our criticisms of other people. How much we run a little tape about what's wrong with other people. Or you can run a tape about what's wrong with yourself. An equally big target. It starts to change as you start to be willing to look, to actually see what's there, and you're not trying to manufacture something. You're really just trying to cultivate what you've always had. Everyone is perfect. Our eyes bring us the world. Our ears. We have bodies. We can taste, we can smell. We don't know how that happens. We don't know how we do that. We can understand it scientifically in some way, but it's a mystery. The fact that we're here, the fact that we're born and we're going to die. It's not resolvable by adopting some creed, having some sort of explanation, no matter how deep that explanation seems. It can only be lived. This is a great time of year to realize how wonderful life can be. Trees in bloom. Until today, it hasn't been too hot. It's just, I do a lot of walking in my neighborhood, and I've upped my game a little bit now that I've got this dog. And so I see so many different neighbors. And it's inspiring to see how many of them are just enthralled with the weather and the trees and the flowers and the breeze. It's really, we're very fortunate. And then it's inspiring when things are tough and you see people who step up, think about the welfare of others. So many people who are doing that. Just as we don't need to throw our hand in because we feel that we haven't been dealt such a good one, we don't have to give up on any situation just because it's worse than it used to be. All of a sudden, times are tougher. You know, it's quite possible that times may get way tougher than they are now. It's not really in our control. No one has a magic wand. Roshi Kapleau used to say, back in the 70s, when the country was throwing its weight around in Vietnam and other places, that countries have karma too. And someday this will be visited on us. Maybe in our lifetime, maybe later on. What will we do when we're challenged? A lot of what we do will be determined by how we use our minds, how we shape the mind. So worth doing, and really, that's what practice is for. Okay, once again, ton of stuff I didn't get to, but I will someday. And for now, let's stop here and recite the 4 vows.